Hello IDC Church family, this is Pastor Seth here with another IDC Essentials video. Today we're going to be talking about growth groups. Growth groups are an important part of our church because it gives our members an opportunity to live out the implications of the gospel as members of our local church here. We believe that the Lord saves you into a community. He gives you a new family when He saves you with the good news of His gospel. And we believe that that has implications for your life. And we believe that within the local church, it is best for you to have a starting point where you can live out the implications of that gospel. And we don't believe that this is the only place that this happens, but we do believe that it is a biblical thing, that we have a small identified group of people that we are able to live out these gospel implications with. We see Jesus doing this throughout the Gospels. We see it as He spends time with His disciples and those who He is gaining in followers, and as they begin to follow Him, He intentionally spends time with them. We also see this in the book of Acts. We see in Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 47, in Acts chapter 5, verses 42, and we see it in Acts 20, verse 20. Additionally, we see the one another commands scattered throughout the New Testament. Earlier on in this series, Pastor Trevor did a wonderful video about the one another commands and why they're so important for us as we seek to live out the gospel in the context of our local church. We want to give you an opportunity through your growth group to have a starting point to live out the one another commands. Plain and simple, that is what we are after. We also believe that growth groups are small gospel communities on mission. And we desire that there would be three outcomes of what we're doing as a growth group. Those are fellowship, discipleship, and mission. So we're going to take those three in this short video today, and I'm going to explain to you what we hope is happening within the growth group context. First, fellowship, where we try to foster biblical community. This idea of biblical community is fostered when you're able to spend intentional time with other brothers and sisters. We believe that this happens in the context of a variety of different ways. Oftentimes, we like to share a meal together in our growth groups. We believe that this is also a biblical thing. We see in the book of Luke that there is a pattern of Jesus spending time over a meal with His followers. Tim Chester has written a great book on this called A Meal with Jesus. And Robert Karras has said, in Luke's gospel, Jesus is either going to a meal, at a meal, or coming from a meal. So meals are very important. And so one of the ways that we like to fellowship with one another and build this gospel community is by sharing a meal together. Oftentimes our groups will only do that when they gather on a weekly basis. They'll share a meal together and they'll just talk about what's going on in their lives and the implications of the gospel for that. Groups may often go out to a park and do something together, have fun with one another, play games with one another, gather for a movie night or a board game night or something like that. We believe that the gospel has implications for all of this because the gospel has implications for all of our life. And as we seek to build this gospel community through fellowship with one another, we have a wonderful desire to see the gospel become more real to us through everyday means as we fellowship with one another. Second, discipleship. We hope that discipleship is happening within the context of our growth groups. Again, this is not the only place that discipleship happens within our church, but we do believe that it is good to both have some intentional and some organic discipleship happening within our local church. And one place that we can do this and be very strategic in the ways that we disciple one another is through the context of our growth groups. So we desire that every member of our church would both be discipling one another and being discipled by one another. This is hugely important. We often call this mutual discipleship. But then often there are times where we have a Titus 2 type relationship with one another, where we have an older brother, more mature brother or sister, mentoring and bringing along and discipling a younger brother or sister. We believe that these types of discipleship relationships, both that mutual discipleship and this Titus 2 type of relationship, can happen both organically and in a formal context. So first, organic discipleship and how this happens. As you fellowship with one another, as I just spoke about, this gives you an opportunity to watch brothers and sisters as they live their life, as they share a meal and their spouse is present, or their kids are present, or how they greet one another or say goodbye to one another. The gospel has implications for all of these things. So we believe that there's a very organic thing that as you watch other brothers and sisters and how they engage with the everyday patterns of their life, you are being discipled by them. And in turn, you are also discipling them in the way that you are greeting one another, speaking to your spouse, speaking to your children, speaking to your roommates. All of these kinds of things are happening as we watch one another live our lives in light of the gospel that has saved us. And so we also hope that there are just organic relationships that happen. One perfect example of this is as you get to know families within the context of your growth group, we hope that you find opportunities to help parents disciple their children. This is a beautiful thing that can happen within the context of our growth groups. And then listening and being very intentional about listening in a very unintentional context about the evidences of grace that the Lord has placed in our brothers and sisters' lives and being encouraged by those things. And then also encouraging brothers and sisters to repentance where needed. So we hope that this mutual discipleship is happening just as we're doing this fellowshipping with one another. But then also, we hope that there are formal discipleship relationships that are happening. This is more of the Titus 2 type of relationships oftentimes, but not necessarily always. We believe that there is a way that people can be paired up with one another in smaller groups, maybe in groups of 3, where they're intentionally walking through a discipleship plan. Oftentimes, groups will implement a strategy like this for a discipleship plan. Many groups have tried this in a variety of different ways. Some groups take this in a particular night of the month that they're meeting, and they break up into these smaller groups for a more intense discipleship. But we also hope that discipleship is happening in a formal sense when we're doing things like sermon discussion. Now, we don't say that sermon discussion has to happen every single week where we're taking the text that was preached on the previous Sunday, and that is what you have to talk about every week at every time you get together as a growth group. But we do believe that as we talk through the text that has been preached, when we do that, the intent of that is that we would be discipling one another so that we can better apply the text that we have just heard preached on the previous Sunday to our lives and see its implications lived out, and then hold each other accountable to doing the things that we say that we want to do within the context of these groups. Third, mission. We want to spur one another on to mission and evangelism. These things are hugely important in the life of our church. When you think about seeing lives changed by the gospel, it cannot be more evident than seeing when someone who is far from God comes into being close with God and saved into this new family that we've been talking about. We desire that our groups would be these small gospel communities on mission. Again, this can happen in a variety of different ways. These engagements can happen in a variety of different ways as well. We would desire that people would be sharing about evangelism opportunities that they have in their everyday lives, whether that's in their workplace or in their neighborhoods or in the places that their kids like to go and hang out, whether it be a park and people that they've met. We hope that people are sharing real names of real people who are far from God, and the group comes together to pray with that person, that the Lord would give them the strength to continue to evangelize and witness to that person, so that hopefully one day that the Lord would call that person to themselves, and then we all as a group and as a church as a whole get to celebrate that together. We hope that this is a place where we're praying for our city. We're in the context of our gatherings, we're praying for what the Lord is doing across the RDU area. We also pray that the Lord would give us opportunities to actually go out and engage the city with the gospel in very intentional ways. And we want to have our groups also intentionally engage specific neighborhoods. Maybe it's the neighborhood where you meet with your growth group on a regular basis. Maybe you could take that as an opportunity to pray for the neighboring houses around, and that group would then maybe be able to go out and prayer walk the neighborhood and meet the different people that live in that neighborhood and engage in some of these relationships together. So oftentimes this being about going on mission together is a great idea. Sometimes that has to happen when we're scattered throughout the city on a weekly basis. We hope that this being on mission is happening in both of those ways. So as we seek to be on mission together as a growth group or a small group, we desire that both of these things are happening, that you're doing it with everyone in the group, and that the group is encouraging you to do that in the times where you're not gathered with them. So finally, in conclusion, we believe that growth groups are vital to the vision and mission of Imago Dei Church. We believe, because of the way that we have decided to structure these, in that each growth group is under the care of a specific elder, that you experience intentional pastoral care through the means of your growth group. And since all members are in one of those groups, we hope that it allows us as pastors to be able to care for you in the best way possible by getting to know you, by visiting you regularly, by checking in with you regularly. So we believe that this is a way that we can do this as pastors and fulfill our covenant to you. We also believe that with each group fellowshipping with one another regularly, that lives are being changed by the gospel continually as we engage in conversations with one another in a very relaxed kind of environment. We believe that through discipleship, both that mutual discipleship and Titus 2 discipleship relationship, that lives are being changed by the gospel. The Lord is not leaving us where we are when He saved us, but He is taking us somewhere. It's a continual relationship that we are engaged in with one another so that we would be spurred on by this gospel. And then we also believe that through the members of our church, this mission that we have seen that the Lord has given us in the Great Commission, that we would go out and do mission together so that those who are currently far from God would be brought near to God and see their lives changed by the gospel. Church family, this is what we're trying to do as growth groups, and I hope that this has been an encouragement to you in that.